Hello everyone and Assalamu alaikum. This is Ejaz Khan, and today it's our third lecture of Strategic Business Leader. Before we start our today's topic, I would like to give you a quick recap of what we have done so far so that we have a connection of our previous lectures with our today's lecture. As you know, we were discussing strategic planning model proposed by Johnson, Scholes, and Whittington. And according to that model, there are 3 stages in strategic planning process, which means that whenever a company is to implement a particular strategy, it has to go through 3 stages. In the first stage, the company is expected to analyze its internal and external environments, and this is called strategic position. In this stage, the company actually analyzes its position against its environment. That is where this organization is standing with regards to whatever is happening in the environment. Because every organization operates in a particular environment and it has to respond to the changes happening in the environment. It can't keep itself isolated from whatever is happening in the environment or whatever is expected to happen in the environment it is operating in. So it must see where it is standing at the moment from strategic point of view, where it wants itself to be in the future, and what strategy is it going to pursue so that it moves from its current position to the position that it is expected to go to in the future. So why is it important to see where the current position of the company is as compared to environment? Because unless and until a company knows what resources, capabilities, strengths it has, and what weaknesses, the things that may stop him from reaching to a position where it intends to reach in the future. So it's very important for organization to find out the areas that it needs to improve and the areas that it needs to use so that it can reach there. But the capabilities, the resources, the strengths that the company has will have no meaning if it's not able to avail the opportunities that it might see in the future. So it has to look at the external environment to grab those opportunities, to find out those opportunities that will help the company to grow. Now, these opportunities will definitely be coming from outside the organization. So the company cannot keep itself isolated from the environment. So it has to keep an eye on what's happening in the environment. Now, it has to identify the factors that it must consider before it can come up with a successful strategy. And those factors, we discussed a model called Pestle, in which we discussed the political factors, the economical factors, the socio-cultural factors, the technological factors, the environmental factors, and the legal factors. Because almost all of these factors, in some way or the other, will be affecting the company's position. So before it can pursue a particular strategy, it has to look at these factors, whether these factors will allow the organization to pursue a particular strategy, or it may be required to change its strategy, change its structure in order to survive and grow in that particular environment. So looking at the Pestle analysis, we were actually looking at the macro level external analysis. Then we also looked at Porter Diamond, in which we were looking at the factors which give any organization or any nation, I would say, competitive advantage over other nations. This Porter Diamond model is basically used when organizations decide to explore beyond the national boundaries. For example, if company A is looking for expanding into a foreign country, but before it moves toward that country, it can use the Porter Diamond to find out what competitive advantages its competitors may have over this company. So there are factors, there were multiple factors according to Porter Diamond, which will give any nation or any competitor operating in a particular country an edge over the other the other organizations coming from another country. So we discussed those factors, and I will just quickly go through those factors. So let me quickly go through those factors discussed in the Porter Diamond, which give competitive advantage to one nation over other nations. According to Porter, the first factor that may give competitive advantage to one nation or the other is the rivalry or the firm structure in a particular country, because if there's a fierce competition between competitors in any country, it will mean that that particular industry, that particular country will have, or the organization operating in that particular environment will be coming up with very high quality products and services because of the competition. So whenever any company coming from outside the country and considering to step into that particular market, it must consider this fact in the mind that they will be facing a tough competition. They will be providing high quality products and services in order to succeed in that market. The other factor, according to Porter Diamond, was the government of that country. How friendly or how supportive is government for the organizations operating in that country? Because the support of the government is very crucial for getting competitive advantage. Most of the governments, they impose taxes, import duties on imports to discourage imports and to encourage local production. So what happens is that the local organizations in that country will get an edge on anybody coming out from outside the country. Then the third was the support industries in that country, because when you are supposed to produce a particular product, you need labor, you need material, and if you have supporting industries which will be providing you with skilled labor, will be providing you the material that you need for production, it means that you will be in a very better position compared to any other organization coming from outside. Because if you have material available in your local markets, if you have highly skilled labor in your local markets. This will give you competitive advantage as it will be less costly for you to operate since you have material and labor or other resources available in a nearby locations. Then the other factor that according to Porter will give a competitive advantage is the factor conditions. The factor conditions, which we say factors of production, the land, the capital, the labor. Now, if any country, uh, there are any country which is rich in natural resources will definitely get a competitive advantage or over other nations where there is a scarcity of natural resources. For example, if you are rich, your country is rich in producing oil, and you use oil in your manufacturing process, definitely you will be getting this material at a lower price, a lower cost, which will reduce your cost of production, and you'll be in a better position to compete in the market. Same goes for labor, and same goes for capital. Uh, uh, if your market is such that where you can easily get capital, you can easily get finance, again, it will give you a competitive advantage over other nations. Then the other factor was chance, according to Porter, that a nation may also get competitive advantage or may lose competitive advantage because of this factor called chance, which includes natural disasters. For example, if the country is in such a geographical location where there's a high probability of getting earthquakes or floods or any other natural disaster, that the companies operating in that market will lose competitive advantage because they every now and then they may be facing losses, which will be increasing their costs. So their competitive advantage will be gone. So the chance could be in the shape of any invention. Maybe one of the nations spend a lot on research and development, and every now and then they come up with something new, they come up with inventions. So if that's the case, the companies operating in that particular country will have a competitive advantage over the others as they will be coming up with new technologies. So these were the factors, according to Porter, which give one nation a competitive advantage over the other. So any business who is looking for entering such markets, first look at these factors before they can actually decide whether to enter the market or not. And then if they decides to, if the organization decides to enter into such markets, then it must look at the strategy to cope up with the competitive advantage that those organizations may already have. So this was Porter Diamond. Again, it was a macro level external analysis. Well, the today's topic is basically about micro level external analysis. So far, we were doing it on a national level. Now we'll be coming to the industrial level external analysis, where we'll be analyzing the industry position that an organization is expected to operate in or is operating in already. So that's now we will be discussing the micro level analysis, but it's still an external analysis. Again, we'll be considering the external factors that might affect the company's strategy. So today's topic is actually Porter's 5 forces model. Well, what this model is all about. According to this model, there are 5 basic forces that shape any organization's strategy. Or you can say there are 5 factors which must be considered before a particular strategy can be formulated for any organization. According to Porter, if any organization fails to consider these factors into account, it takes these factors into account, then there's a great chance that it may come up with unsuccessful strategy. So they must look at these 5 forces before they draft or implement any particular strategy. Now, these 5 forces are the threats of new entrants. Definitely, whenever there's a risk that a company may have a new competitor entering into the market, it would mean that it will have more competitors to compete with, and you never know what type of competitor is coming in. What will its strategy be? How the strategy of that competitor will be different from the strategies of the other competitors. So there is always a threat, in some cases low or in some cases high, but there will always be a threat that there will be a new entrant coming into the market. So you can never ignore the risk of a new competitor coming to the market while you'll be formulating strategy. So you'll have to analyze the position, that how likely it is that a new competitor is going to come in. So it's very important to analyze the likelihood of a new entrant. The second force will be the supplier. It's the supplier power. Now, if you are buying raw materials from supplier or suppliers, definitely there will be some level of power that those suppliers will be showing, especially with regards to pricing. Few suppliers will be in a very dictating position, and few suppliers might be very weak in that regards. Few of the suppliers might be increasing prices every now and then because they may be in a position to do so. Whereas on the other hand, few suppliers may not be in the position to do so. So you must analyze what's the power of your suppliers. Now just to give you a quick to give you an example of why it's very important to analyze the power of supplier, is that, for example, you're considering to increase your product's price. Now, when you increase the price of the product, it also gives an indicator to the supplier that the company is making high margins. And if they are powerful, they may force you to increase the prices of the material as well. So before you can actually go for raising your prices, increasing your prices, you must look at the power of supplier. Then there's another factor, which is the buyer power. You also have to look at how powerful your buyers are. Again, it's very important to look at the power of buyers, because if you tend to increase your price, will you be in a position to do so? It will totally depend on the buying power of your customers. If the buying power of your customers is at a high side, it will be difficult for you to change the price or change the terms. So again, it's very important to look at the buyer power. Then threat of substitution. You also have to analyze that whether your product is such that it may be easily substituted. I will just quickly give you an example of Pepsi and Coke. Now, if you go to a restaurant and you order a meal and the waiter asks for a drink and you say, just give us Pepsi, and most of the times many restaurants and many hotels, they have a contract with any of these two suppliers, of Pepsi or Coke, and they usually keep either of the two. So if the waiter says that we don't have Pepsi, we have Coke instead. So you won't take. I don't think it will take long for you to switch to Coke. So substitution again is a very important factor. If you are designing a strategy for your product, you also have to look at substitutes or the strategy of the suppliers who are offering substitutes to your products. You also have to look at that as well. Plus, maybe you have a product today which does not have any substitute today, but there is always a threat that a product may get a substitute in the future. An example will be cameras. The cameras have totally been replaced by cell phones, high quality cell phones. Now you can see 4K capable cameras in cell phones as well. So to some extent, the cameras have been substituted by the cell phones, by the smartphones. So the threat of substitution is again an important is an important factor before you can actually shape any strategy. The last is the competitive rivalry. You also have to analyze the type of rivalry that the existing competitors have in the industry. It's again very important. If there's a peace and harmony between the competitors and they have formed cartels, and you know that they don't enter into price wars, then the strategy that you will design will be different. But the moment you see that there is a rivalry in the industry, and the moment you change the price, you see all the competitors responding to that and they start competing with you, it means that there's a tough competition and the rivalry is at peak. So the strategy in that case will definitely be different. So you cannot ignore the level of or the type of rivalry that exists between existing competitors while drafting any strategy. Now let's I just discussed the level of rivalry that may exist between existing competitors. Now, if the rivalry is at peak, your strategy will be different. When you see that the rivalry is not that much, and there is a great market available, huge market available, and the competitors are not that much concerned about your pricing strategy because they know that they have a huge market ahead of them, and they follow their own policies. They don't react to strategies. They just act on their own strategies, and they don't pay heed to what is happening in the market from competitors' point of view. So they just stick to their own policies. In that case, you'll have a room to modify your strategies and to come up with new strategies. But in case of tough competition, you will always have to look at the competition before you can come up with any particular strategy. Now, let's discuss supplier power. Now we have discussed why is it important to know whether the power of supply is at a higher side or a lower side. It's very important to know, and I just discussed the importance of it. Now let's discuss when a supplier may have a high bargaining power. So let's now discuss the factors that will give more power to a supplier. The first factor will be the switching cost of the buyers. If it's costly to switch to another supplier, and if the supplier knows this fact that the buyer cannot switch because of the costs attached, then it will give power to the supplier. As you will know, that even if he increases its prices slightly, you will still have to buy it because of the high switching costs involved. Threat of forward integration. Forward integration is basically when a company buys its customers or its buyers. So if the supplier has the potential or capability of buying the company to which it is supplying, so this will give this company a power to dictate its terms because it has the power to buy that company altogether. So when the risk of forward integration is high, it gives suppliers the power to dictate its terms. Small number of suppliers relative to buyers, as mentioned earlier. When there are a large number of buyers but very few suppliers, this will automatically give them more power. Low dependence of a supplier's sales on a particular buyer. If you as a buyer is a small customer for your supplier, definitely your bargaining position as a buyer will be low, whereas the supplier's bargaining position will be high. Switching costs of suppliers are low. It's the other way around. When the suppliers can easily switch from one buyer to another buyer, and it does not involve any costs, again, it will give them the bargaining power. Substitutes are not available. You're using raw material for which there are no other substitutes available, and you have to use the same raw material. Again, it will give power to the suppliers. The buyer relies heavily on sales from suppliers. Again, by and large, these all factors um, are almost the same. If due to one reason or the other reason, you're not able to leave that supplier. So if that's the case, this gives more power to suppliers. Now let's discuss the buyer power. What factors give power to buyers? To, buyers here mean the people that we will be selling our goods to, that is our customers. So how powerful our customers are, or what factors give power to customers? So again, so buyers are more concentrated than sellers. That is when you have few buyers and more sellers, threat of backward integration is high. It will again give more power to buyers as they have the ability to buy their supplier, the whole organization. So that's called backward integration. Buyers price sensitive. Now, what does this mean? It means that if a buyer is price sensitive and is very much cautious about the changes in price, again, it will be difficult to change the prices, as this will be this may lead to losing the customer. So when a buyer is price sensitive, the suppliers will be very cautious about any changes in the price. And why a buyer may be price sensitive? The buyer may be price sensitive because he may have more options. The moment you change the price, it switches to somebody else, or it may switch the product. It may switch to any substitute, or maybe increasing the price of the product that it is buying. Maybe it will lead to losing a competitive advantage in the market where it is selling the product. So that maybe because of that, he's very price sensitive. So again, if he's price sensitive, then it will give him more strength. Undifferentiated product. Again, if you are selling a product that is very much the same as available in the markets and easily available in the market, again, that will give buyers more strength. If that buyer to whom you're selling your goods is one of the big customers of yours, again, he will be more powerful. substitutes are available, buyer purchases comprise large portion of the seller sales, the same thing that we discussed earlier. So all these factors, if present, will give more power to buyers. So now let's move towards the next factor, and this is the threat of substitution. When the threat of substitution, when is the threat of substitution higher? Now there are two areas in this regards. One is the um, entrance entrance of new substitutes in the market, and second is the policies of the companies who are providing the substitutes of the product that we are offering. So there are two areas in that regards. So when will the threat of new product coming into the market as a substitute of our product will be high? Well, if your product is complex and you are providing a product that is very complex, the risk of new product coming up as a substitute will be low. But if the product is of a very simple nature, it's not that complex, so it will be very easy for any organization to come up with a substitute of that product. So in that regards, the substitution, the risk of the substitution, or the risk of the threat of the substitution will be at a lower side. Again, the other side of the threat of substitution is the policies of the competitors who are offering substitute products. How will they respond to the change in policy from your side? Again, it's very important how likely they will respond to your pricing strategy or to your marketing strategy. Now, if they are very much responsive, they quickly respond to whatever policy you implement, then it will be a different way to cope up with this problem. But if the substitutes, their policies or their policies or their strategies are by and large independent of of the strategies that you're offering, then definitely you'll have room for making your own choices. Now, when will be the threats of new entrants in the market be high? Now, another factor is the threats of new entrants. So, so when will be the threat of new entrants at a higher side? Profitability does not require economies of scale. And what does this mean? Well, in few businesses, if you really want to be profitable, you have to produce in high numbers in order to be profitable. In that case, the threat of new entrant will be very low, because it will be difficult for the new entrant to produce at such a huge numbers straight away. If you look at the book publishing industry, it is more costly for a book publishing company to produce or publish a few number of books. So they usually publish books in high numbers, and only then they will be earning profits. So when you need to make profits, and for that you have to have mass production, so that it costs you less on a per unit basis, or a fixed cost is divided on many number of units, and you get and in order to get a lowest cost per unit, you have to produce in numbers. Then it's difficult for new entrants to enter the market. Products are undifferentiated. When products are undifferentiated, that is, when you're not producing a unique product and you're producing almost a similar type of product, the threat will be high for the entrants, because they don't have to do anything special to compete you, because they have to produce the same product which everybody else is producing. Brand names are not well known. This is again a very important name. When customers, they are brand conscious, and they're brand conscious, and there are established brands in the market. Now, if the brands are established in the market, then the risk of new entrants will be low, because everybody will be knowing that people are buying from the established brands, and they will be worried about their own sales, as they will be new to the market, so they won't have established brand, so the risk will be low. But if the products are sold by companies who are not well-known brands, and the customers are not that much brand conscious, then the threat will be high, because anybody can come up and they can grab customers. Initial capital investment is low. Anybody can start with a very small level of investment. Like these days, if you look at the e-commerce business, you will see that the number of e-commerce businesses setting up, and every now and then we see advertisements coming up on Facebook, our Facebook news feed, and we see new businesses coming up, because these days even you don't have even to develop a website for e-commerce. You can just go and create a Facebook page, and you can start selling using that Facebook page. There are so many features for e-commerce available on Facebook pages. So again, the setup cost is too low. That's why there's always a threat that new competitor will be coming in. Consumer switching costs are low. So again, if the switching costs of consumer are low, it will mean that any new supplier coming up will be easily getting the customers. So it will be an incentive for new businesses to come and join the business. Accessing distribution channels is easy. Anybody can come and can hand over the distribution to any distributor, and there are no former contracts, exclusive contracts of the existing distributors with the existing suppliers. So again, the new entrants risk will be at a higher side. Location is not an issue. Again, I just said that the online business, they are getting in numbers, and the reason is that the online business, the e-commerce, is independent of location. So when you need a specific location to operate in, for any business to set up, it will be difficult to get that location at times. But if location is not a concern, and it's not required, a particular location is not required, then it will be too easy for new business to come in. Government policy is not an issue, as we discussed earlier, that regulations, if there are no regulations, there are no laws that stop new entrants for coming into the market, again, it will be easy for any new business to come in. So here we have an activity, and I want you people to take 5 minutes and just do a brainstorming session, and apply this 5 forces model to Coca-Cola company. What do you think the level of the threats in each category that we discussed? Just come up with the rating, that what will be the level of risk, let's say, whether the risk of new entrants in case of Coca-Cola will be at a higher side or at a lower side. So just do a brainstorming session and perform 5 force analysis for Coca-Cola. So let's see. The 5 forces analysis of Coca-Cola company. Now, the threat of new entrants will be at a medium level, and the reason is that the entry barriers are relatively low for the beverage industry. There is no consumer switching cost, and you can't say it's zero capital requirement, but definitely the capital requirement will not be that high. in case of setting up any beverage company. So there is an increasing amount of new brands appearing in the market with similar prices than Coke products. Now, why do we see it's medium? Why do we say, sorry, why do we say it's a medium pressure? Why aren't we saying it's low? So if you look at from one angle that there's no switching cost on part of the consumers, and relatively it does not need a high level of a setup cost, which will act as a barrier. So, um, but on the other side, there is always a brand loyalty. Um, if you are going to introduce a new beverage and if you come up with a new company, it's least likely to get a space in the market. We've seen many companies jumping into this and trying to give competition to Coca-Cola and Pepsi, but they didn't stay for long. So that brand consciousness of the customers with regards to beverage industry will create some sort of a barrier for the new entrants. So we can say that the pressure is a medium pressure. Now, what about the threat of substitution? It's medium to high. There are many kinds of energy drinks because when you say um, when we talk about substitutes, there are substitutes available for for Pepsi and for Coke. There are many kinds of energy drinks, soda juices, products in the market. Coca-Cola does not really have an entirely unique flavor. In a blind test, people can't tell the difference between Coca-Cola and Pepsi. So again, the threat uh, of substitution will be from medium to high. So the bargaining power of buyers, low pressure, because um, you know that Coca-Cola will have more high number of customers, and when you have a huge base of customers, then the customers' power will be at a lower side. They won't get dictated by individual customers. Bargaining power of suppliers, again, the pressure will be lower, and the reason will be Coca-Cola is such a big company, and the materials that it will be using will not be something very unique. Like it uses carbonated water. It's not a unique product. It can easily be found from many suppliers. Phosphoric acid, again, it's not that unique. Sweeteners and caffeine. So they will have many options when it comes to buying from suppliers. So the supplier power in this regards will be at a lower side. Rivalry amongst existing firms. Well, the rivalry is very high, and I don't know how many of you will be aware of it, but we've seen here when Coca-Cola announces any promotion, very soon we see Pepsi coming up with the same type of promotion and vice versa. So they have intense rivalry, and I would like to show a commercial um, uh, that I saw a few years back. It's actually a band commercial, but it's a very good commercial to give you an idea of the type of rivalry that exists between these two rival companies, Coca-Cola and Pepsi. So just like to would like you people to watch this video. So you can see the type of rivalry that exists between these two rivals. Um, and this is the commercial And this was actually banned. I think it was a banned commercial, but imagine if these types of commercials are allowed to go on air. You can see the type of commercials that may be coming in the future. So the rivalry is very high between these competitors. So that was Board of Five Forces analysis.